Here we go. Okay. Thank you, Gabriel. All right. So we're going to begin on page 174. Have I been here before? Steve, you want to read?
Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Hold on. Let me get to 174. I got to get my glasses. You want to give me a second?
Sure. There's one there.
Have I been here before?
Right.
This chapter will explore a concept that fascinated the ancients, just as it remains highly intriguing today. Reincarnation, or in Hebrew, Gilgal, simply put, is the mystical concept that a soul that once lived in a body can be returned to this world to inhabit a second body and live a second lifetime. Not surprisingly, for such an ethereal and for some spooky subject, the idea of reincarnation has itself been reincarnated repeatedly through multiple religions and superstitions. What is the unique Jewish mystical tradition on reincarnation? Can we come back? Must we come back? Why and how? For the sake of clarity, it's necessary to first examine currently held ideas or intuitions about soul reincarnation.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Right, so this is this might even be the reason why some of you joined the class, because this is really a fascinating topic. And like other things, I'm sure you've seen it in the movies or on TV, or might have seen an article here and there. But as Jewish people, we want to know, what does the Torah say? Do we believe in it? And do we come back? Do we come back forever? So we're going to take just a quick poll over here. The question 174: how do you feel about the concept of reincarnation? Are you fascinated with it? Perhaps even charmed by the idea, or does it disturb you?
I'm certainly fascinated by it.
Fascinated. All right, Steve.
And a little, nervous about it too, I guess.
Why nervous?
I'm not sure what'll happen, and the thought of nothing happening would really makes me feel uncomfortable. So
on one hand, if I understand, you want to feel like your journey doesn't just end after your soul exits the body. It goes on. On the other hand, you're not exactly sure what's going to happen.
Correct.
So you want the journey to go on. He just does not. But you want to know what happened. All right. Anyone else? Do you like the idea? Disturbed idea? Anyone else want to chime in?
Well, the thought that always goes through my mind is about our loved ones. So if reincarnated, then we are missing the loved ones that we had before. And if we're reincarnated again, then we'll miss the loved ones that we have now. Except
it's like this. It's if I get reincarnated, then I want to be connected to the same people I am now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's enough fair. Anyone else?
There's also another point of reincarnation that some people don't think about. Time is not linear in the supernatural world. You could be reincarnated to the past as opposed to the future. It's just an interesting thought.
I hear what you're saying. Hold on a second. Hold on one second. The clue is here. One second. I'll be right back. 1 second.
Since Morty left, I'm going to take over the class. How does that sound?
That sounds good to me, Larry.
How are you doing, Michael J?
Missing you during Shabbos.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It's we're down one heckler at the service.
Sorry, the cleaning crew just showed up. Okay, so usually in my conversations with people when talking about this topic, the part that charms them or delights them is the idea that we're not just here and we're gone. Like Steve said, there's a connection to the past, and I know I'm going to go on in the future. It's kind of this eternal or this immorality about me that I kind of like. I know that, I'm so important that I'm going to be reused. I'm not just like a plastic cup, or a disposable mask. I'm going to clean, reuse. It's good. On the other hand, what bothers people, and a little surprised no one brought this up, is, one second, I want to feel like my accomplishments, what I did, are mine. So basically, you're telling me that what I did is not really mine. I'm assisted from the past. And then you're telling me that some other guy made mistakes and I have to come back and clean up his mess. That doesn't seem fair. So I'm damaged goods, I'm recycled goods. So that's why some people are disturbed, to use the word in the question. They're disturbed about this concept of reincarnation. So we have to discuss what Judaism's view on reincarnation is, where we fit in. And so before we do that, we're gonna take a poll. Not a poll, you're gonna do it in your books on page 175, an exercise. And then we're gonna take a poll of where we stand now on what your thoughts of reincarnation, what your knowledge of reincarnation is now. And then we'll come back to it at the end of the class. Okay, here we go. So do the exercise on page 175, all right? Quickly, it's only 7 questions, true or false. Shouldn't take you more than a minute. And then we'll just take a vote of how many trues and how many falses. If you want, you can in the chat, you can set your chat to respond only to me, so only I can see your answers. If you care, if you don't mind, you can respond to everybody. Okay, 30 seconds. I'm going to go through the answers. I would say I want to call out your answers, but it's Zoom. It only picks up one mic at a time. Okay, here we go. In the chat, everyone. So you see over there in the bottom, it says to. Could say everyone, or could just say to me. Here we go. Belief in reincarnation is basically Judaism. True or false? I got one reply. You guys can call out your answers if you want.
So we're only replying to you or replying to the group?
You can do whichever one you want. Some people want their answers to be anonymous.
So fine, true.
Okay, I'm just gonna get in with one. I'm gonna say true, true, and false.
Okay, wait, 1 second. True. For one answer. Oh boy. Number 2, in the Jewish view, reincarnation means that a soul that inhabited one body returns to inhabit another. True or false?
True.
Okay, we got some truths.
I'm just going to the participation.
We have a false. Okay. Number 3. By the way, everyone could participate. You can call out your response, or you can type it in the chat. If you don't want me to mock you in public, I'm not going to mock you in public. Number 3, a human soul can be reincarnated in a non-human entity, such as an animal or a plant. True or false?
Are we talking about everybody or just Larry?
Barbara says false. I say it's true.
I say false.
We need Larry to be reincarnated in a non-talking entity, whatever that is.
I want to come back as a 787 jet plane.
Number 4, a reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone who lived in a previous lifetime. True or false?
It's false.
False.
Okay. We got a false here. A few falses.
Directly.
All right. Number 5, the purpose of doing good in one's current lifetime is to be reincarnated as someone, as a person of higher status. I didn't even finish reading the question, Gabriel. You already shot out an answer.
False.
Michael J., what do you say?
I said false.
You say false. Elizabeth, why don't you they'll make me pick on you in front of the whole class.
I'm trying to read them and think. I can't.
I think the question
it's
is
taking longer.
based on what you know now before we learn. What you think now, what are your conceptions, what you have now?
Yeah, no, these are deep questions. I mean, it takes a lot of thinking.
Thinking is not good. No thinking. Leon, let's go. I don't hear any answers. A soul is reincarnated as the penalty for sins committed in a prior life. True or false?
I say true.
You say true. All right. Most souls today are reincarnations. What do we say?
True.
That's a lot of people today. Yeah, that sounds good.
God only has a limited supply of souls, so he has to reuse it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I guess.
Is it cheating to have read the whole lesson before starting?
Who, me?
No,
Yeah, I cheated. I read the
whole
lesson
thing,
before
and I know
starting.
that the answer to that one is that the souls are being constantly reinstituted and split off and whatever.
Okay, let's go in order. Does Judaism believe in reincarnation? The answer is yes. The answer is true. We say it every night before going to bed. The introductory paragraph to the bedtime Shema. It is in your prayer book. It's not only in the Chabad prayer book, it's in pretty much every prayer book. So this isn't something Hasidic or Ashkenazim, Sephardim, Mizrahi. Everyone says the same thing, as you can see in text. Page 176, that the reincarnation is a Jewish belief, master of the universe. I hereby forgive anyone who vexed me, sinned against me, either in this incarnation or in the other. So we see right away that 1 second, let's go back a second. We see right away that reincarnation does exist. Okay. So some of you might be thinking, anyone have any questions? I'm preempting a question you might ask. Before we start talking about Judaic belief in reincarnation, some of you might be asking, how do you know? Where's your empirical evidence? How do you know that there's anything exists about reincarnation? Nope. So the answer is like this. I'll answer this question with a joke. There's once these two guys were taking an entrance exam for a high-paying job, and it was a 10-question quiz, and they both got 9 questions right. The company hired one guy and didn't hire the other one. So one who wasn't hired said, "I don't understand. It's not fair." He says, you hired that guy. We both got the same questions, 9 questions. We both got 9 questions right. Not only that, we each got the same question wrong. Why did you choose him over me? So the HR guy says, it's true that you both got the same question wrong. Whereas in the question that he didn't know, he wrote, "I don't know." And you wrote, "Neither do I." So a lot of the stuff we don't know, meaning we don't know more than we know. What we do know comes from Kabbalah. What is Kabbalah? Many people translate the word Kabbalah as mysticism. The problem with the word mysticism has a whole spooky, hocus pocus kind of feel. The word Kabbalah literally means received. Oral tradition. Moshe received it from God on Sinai, the entire Torah, and part of it is what we call mysticism. So this was taught, and we have to believe in our great men who taught us this. Okay, so far so good. Any questions? No? Good. All right, let's go. The question on the many lives of a soul. Anyone hoping to, there's a page 177. Anyone hoping to shed light on a genuine perspective on function and reincarnation, you have to look at the teachings of the Arizal or Isaac Luria. And his preeminent student, the one who actually was the only authorized scribe to write down his teaching, Reb Chaim Vital. And then we're going to get into Gilgal. Before we get into Gilgal, does anything we learned last week bother you about what we're discussing this week? Anybody? Anyone have a question based on what we learned last week about what we're about to discuss this week?
Is there a pop quiz?
No pop quiz. We already had our pop quiz.
Okay, just checking. Then I have no questions.
No question. The question is like this. Last week we discussed that the soul exits the body, and based on its actions, its mitzvot and misdeeds, while it was down here on this earth, it goes through a transitional phase of Gehenna, and then it goes to its destination, meaning its final stop, Gan Eden. So if Gan Eden is the final stop, where does reincarnation come? Reincarnation means it's continuing the journey. So when does Gan Eden happen? After how many reincarnations? How do these two ideas fit? Right? That's a very good question. We have to answer that question. The question bothering anyone else? Hello, I'm waiting in the waiting room. Sorry. Someone's waiting in the waiting room. Now she is. There you go. Okay. Sorry. So, in order to understand how the whole Gilgal reincarnation and heaven and hell fit, let's get into the how, the why, and the who. All right. First, the how. How does it work? God created the world in the beginning, right? And he created one human being, right? I'm not saying a man on purpose, one human being. When God created that one human being, it was both a man and a woman. I don't want to get into it. It had both male and female parts, not physically. Let's just, because when we're saying souls over here, every soul has a male and female element. The male element goes into a man, the female element goes into a woman. So God created Adam, man, human, and that one soul was the root of all souls. Let's look at text number 2. But before we actually read the text, I want to stop and I want to introduce some characters, because this whole lesson we're going to be quoting a lot from one person. Kabbalah, or mysticism, was given to Moses at Mount Sinai, just like the rest of the Torah was. But it remained a secret. It remained only taught to a few for thousands of years. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote down a lot of Kabbalah in the book famously known as the Zohar. Even though he wrote it down, it still remained a secret, known to only the great, the rabbis, and it was passed on from the teacher to the students who they thought was most appropriate to learn it and to understand it. In the 1500s, mainly in the city of Tzfat or Safed, there was an explosion of Kabbalistic learning and teaching. The most famous Kabbalist is known as the Arizal. The Arizal was not originally from Israel. He's originally from Europe, I think Italy or Germany, and he came to Israel. He lived a very short life. He only started teaching Kabbalah at 36. He passed away at 38. And he is regarded as the greatest Kabbalist of all time. what makes him the greatest Kabbalist of all time? Because he revealed and taught the deepest concepts in Jewish mysticism that no one had ever taught. So what we're learning today is based on what the Arizal says. The Arizal is considered the foremost authority of Gilgul, although it does appear in the concept of Gilgul does appear in the Zohar. Actually, do we have time for a story?
Sure.
All right. The concept of Gilgul appears in the Zohar in Parshas Mishpatim. Parshas Mishpatim in the Torah is a portion that deals with civil litigation and reimbursement for damages. That's where it appears the first time. So there's a story with a Maggid of Deiber of Mezrich once asked his teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, he says, why out of all places does the concept of Gilgulim appear in the Parsha of Mishpatim with civil litigation? So in reply, the Baal Shem Tov told the Maggid to come with him to a certain place. And they came into a forest, and there was a clearing there, and they sat and observed. And while they were there, they saw a horseman arrive, dismounted his horse. He ate his lunch, and then he leapt onto the horse and sped away. And then he dropped a money pouch. Then came a traveler, and he walked by, and he sees this money pouch. He picked it up and he left. A little while later, a poor man, it was traveling, and he came to this clearing and lay down for a nap. While he was sleeping, the nobleman came back on his horse. He interrogated the poor man about the money, and the poor man said, I have no idea what you're talking about. The nobleman beat him and kicked him and bloodied him, and then the Baal Shem Tov said, okay, let's go. Baal Shem Tov explained to the Maggid like this: these three people actually met in a previous life. That the nobleman really owed the person with the traveler money, and he denied it. So that's why he lost the money and went to the traveler. Now the traveler took the nobleman, as in the previous life, to the judge, and the judge ruled incorrectly. So therefore the judge came reincarnated as a poor person, and he got a good beating deserved. So that's why it appears in this parasha. Anyway, going back to where we are. So the Arizal taught Kabbalah for a very, very short time, but he only taught it. He never transcribed it. His foremost student, his greatest student, was a man named Rabbi Chaim Vital. He was the one who was authorized to write down the Arizal teaching. Everything, all the teachings that we have of the Arizal are from Rabbi Chaim Vital. Okay, we got the whole historic background. Let's get into text number 2. Any questions before we go on? Before we get into the meat of the lesson?
No.
Okay, here we go. Text number 2. It all began with one master soul, the soul of Adam. And he included all future souls. Subsequently, this master soul was passed on to Abraham, and then passed to Isaac, and then passed to Jacob, and then was divided into the 12 tribes. Afterwards, the soul further partitioned among the 70 souls descended with Jacob to Egypt, and then further separated eventually among the 600,000 souls who left Egypt. So we think of it like a tree. Starts off with a trunk, and then it keeps branching off. So in biology, we have the same concept. We have one organism that starts off. We have an organism that starts off at a single cell, and then divides and breaks up into many parts. So that's the how you have one soul that breaks up into many different parts. That's why no people look the same, and they don't act the same. They don't think the same. Okay. That's the history of souls. Now let's get into the why. If anyone has a question, feel free to ask, interrupt, or write it on the chat, and I will do my best to answer. But again, I'm not going to be able to answer all your questions, like we said before. But you don't know, neither do I. I'm just giving you based on what we learned. Let's get into the why. Text 178. Why does a soul reincarnate? You have to know that the Chaim Vital says that every soul must fulfill, right? Every soul must fulfill all 613 mitzvot. Everybody knows that there are 613 basic general principles in the Torah. I mean, they branch off into a bunch of details, but there's 613 mitzvot, and every soul has to do 613 mitzvot. Those 600,000 souls who were present at Mount Sinai, we read a few weeks ago, God came down and spoke to the Jewish people. Well, you might ask yourself, if I wasn't present at Sinai, why am I obligated to do the Torah? So those, like we said in text number 2, those 600,000 souls were root souls. All of our souls come from them. And because they were present physically, we were present there as well. And it's our job to do all the 613 mitzvahs that God commanded us on Sinai. What happens if we don't do a mitzvah? Then the soul has to come back to fulfill those 613 mitzvahs. That means God has a job to do. This is not a wish that I wish it could be, but if it doesn't, okay. God has a job that has to be done. The question is not if, the question is when. So the soul has to do all 613 mitzvahs. And if it does not, then it has to come back to elevate its part in the world and to elevate the soul. There's a great quote that says, the trouble with doing something right the first time is nobody pretty much understands just how difficult it was. There's a lot of hard work to do. Not always is it finished, or sometimes there's two parts to it. Oh, there's two parts to it. There's the positive mitzvah, and then there's the negative mitzvah. Sometimes a shema will fail to do a positive. Sometimes a person will violate. So there's rectification. There is missed opportunities that now must be done. Any questions so far? No questions, really?
Yes, yes. I thought this, wait a minute. Can you hear me? Yeah. I thought the 613 mitzvot, some of those were undoable unless, there was a temple.
Thank you. Someone's paying attention. There you go. Get her an ice cream.
That's my question too. Some can't be performed unless you're a Kohen.
Something can't be performed in your Kohen, and some can be performed unless you're in Israel, right? With the Holy Temple. And some mitzvahs, by the way, you can only do one. You can't do the other. So, for example, there's a mitzvah. In English, it's called levirate marriage. There's a mitzvah that if a man dies, if there's a couple that doesn't have any children, and the man dies, so it's a mitzvah for the man's brother to either marry his sister-in-law, have a child, name it after the brother, right? And that child inherits the brother. It's called yibum, or in English levirate, or Latin levirate marriage. But if they don't want to marry each other, then there's a mitzvah to do the process of chalitza, where they break the bond. So there's a mitzvah of yibum, and there's a mitzvah of chalitza. You can't have both. So the question is, how you're saying that God has a mission in the world and all 613 mitzvahs should be done. So, but how is that? How can all mitzvahs be done by everybody? Very good. Nice to see you guys are paying attention. Okay, so there are three basic answers.
If the soul keeps being reincarnated, so in different incarnations, you can do different mitzvahs, and maybe they all add up to 613.
Right. So one answer is like this: those 600, so those are the 600,000 root souls, right? Those souls, they branch off. So that branch, one part can go into a Kohen, one can go into a Levi, and one can go into a Israelite. They're kindred souls. So they accomplish for each other. That is one answer. That is one answer given. Another answer given is we're actually want to talk about later. It's called Ibur, where the soul kind of attaches on to another soul in that situation. We'll get to that later in the chapter. Another answer is that the soul is going to come back at times of Mashiach in order to fulfill in order to fulfill that mitzvah. But yes, but good stuff. So every soul has to fulfill its mission. It's God-given mission. Every soul has a unique part to do, has to do with his job. If the job is not done, God says, okay, you got to go back and get the job done. And so reincarnation is not necessarily a bad thing. It's God giving the soul a chance to complete his mission. It's a very, very nice story. Going back to the Arizal, a man once came to the Arizal and said, I'm looking for I'm trying to get married, I'm looking for many years, and I can't find my basher. So Arizal told him, go to Alexandria. Over there, you're going to meet the daughter of a certain person. You marry. He goes there. He introduces himself to the father and to the girl. They fall madly in love. And the man was the father of the girl was fabulously wealthy, and he gives him as a dowry 150,000 coins, which was an exorbitant number. Right, the great wedding and everything else. 3 months after living in luxury and love, the woman dies. The guy comes running back to the Arizal and says, really, that's what you do to me? It would have been better to remain single. So the Arizal says, let me explain something to you. He reminded him that 25 years ago, he owned a bakery, co-owned a bakery with a certain individual. And this partner had done something wrong, and he ripped them off, and it caused them a loss of 150,000 coins, 50,000 coins. And this man was very bitter about it. Never forgave it, that partner. That guy died, and the guy was reincarnated in this girl. So he had to wait until 20 years older, so that he went and married her. He got a dowry of 150,000 coins, and that affair was rectified. Remes said, if you hadn't been so bitter about it, and you would have forgave your partner, you wouldn't have been single and bitter all this time. He says, now don't worry, you'll find your basher, they'll marry, and that's exactly what happened. There are many, many interesting stories about Gilgal. Anyway, so each one of us has a part in this world that we have to do. Not only is there a part in general in Torah. Any of you familiar with the concept of pardes? Elizabeth, 1 second. I see a question in the chat. So number 2 is true. Is true number 2? We're going to answer number 2 shortly. Okay. Number 2 is a trick question. Yes and no, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
No, wait, so anyone familiar with pardes?
I've heard the term, but I don't know the definition.
Pardes. Pardes is really an acronym. Pardes is really an acronym that literally means orchard. Look at text number 4. Not only is there a part generally in Torah, there's a specific part in Torah that's meant for you. Look at text number 4. Rav Chaim Vital continues. You should also realize that each individual must study all 4 layers of the Torah, which is called the Pardes. The Pei is for Pshat. The Resh is for Remes. The Dalet is for Drash. and the samech is for sod. Literally, it means the literal interpretation of Torah, the illusion, illusion in Torah, the exegetic part of Torah means the learned out, and the mystical. And it's necessary for the soul to be reincarnated repeatedly until it completes them all. There's a video that's going to explain this very well. Here goes. Oh, let me make sure. One second. I'm sharing my screen. That, share sound. Oh, now we can.
Human authors express themselves in their works, both directly and subtly, sometimes intentionally and always subconsciously. When we read a text, we can choose either to read the lines or to engage in more intricate analysis and read between the lines. The divine author of the Torah did something similar, but to an infinitely greater degree. God expressed himself in the text in multiple ways all at once, directly as well as subtly, with plenty of insinuation and a vast hidden layer of the divine subconscious. And he then instructed us to excavate it all. Jewish tradition separates these layers of understanding into 4 categories. The first is pshat, direct intention, which is derived by examining context and syntax. For example, the Torah begins with the words, Bereshis bara Elokim, es hashemayim, ve'es haaretz. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. On the plainest level of Torah understanding, this is a straightforward statement of what happened at the beginning of time. But the simple meaning is not always easy to clarify. Many biblical commentators, most notably Rabbi Shlomo Yitzhaki, the 11th century French scholar known universally as Rashi, devoted their efforts to clarifying the straightforward meaning of the often mysterious biblical texts. Our second layer of understanding is Remes Illusion. This refers to subtle communications that are encoded in the text. They can be uncovered using methods such as the numerical values of the Hebrew letters, the acronyms of words and phrases, or unusually sized letters in the Torah scroll. For example, the Torah's first 2 words, Bereshis bara, in the beginning, God created, carry the numerical value of 1,116. That's the identical value of the phrase Barosh Hashanah Nivra. It was created on Rosh Hashanah.
What's the question again?
We are thereby informed that Rosh Hashanah is the anniversary of creation.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
what's the
Third layer of
question again?
understanding is
It's not a
drush,
question. It's an
interpretive.
explanation of the different
Our
parts of the
sages
Torah.
extrapolate a vast corpus of ideas and instruction from the Torah's text through methods such as textual comparison, sequencing analysis, and homiletical interpretation. For example, from a sequencing perspective, the Torah begins with the wrong beginning. It describes creation, a narrative that is seemingly secondary to the Torah's primary function as a book of guidance that tells us how God expects us to act on a daily basis. The Torah should have dived directly into the nitty-gritty of the laws. On the interpretive level, however, the Torah first describes creation to tackle a major hurdle to Torah observance. The majority of Torah laws rely on the Jewish nation owning and settling the land of Israel. We were instructed to conquer the land and never relinquish our claim of ownership over it. But such a radical claim to a territory is bound to provoke opposition. Who gives us the right to take possession of a land and claim it as our eternal heritage? The Torah, therefore, begins with creation, clarifying that God is the creator of all territories, and he has the right to permanently bequeath a specific parcel to a particular people. It then records the history of God doing precisely that with the Jewish people. With this switch in sequence, the Torah supplies the Jews with the response God expects them to provide all who accuse them of land theft and occupation. The fourth layer of understanding is sod, hidden meaning. This refers to the deeply mystical messages that float behind every phrase and letter in the Torah. For example, The word Bereshis can be split perfectly into two words, bara, shis, meaning he created six. God first formed the six emotive divine attributes, from chesed, kindness, through yesod, attachment, as described in Jewish mysticism. God then used these six attributes to create the actual universe. So there you have a sampling of the four layers of understanding that can be found in the Torah's very first words. Beyond this, a vast ocean of knowledge is contained in these same words. And beyond that stretches the infinite vastness of wisdom contained in the rest of the Torah's close to 80,000 words.
Okay, so let's go through this, break it down slowly. So we're saying that every soul has to learn, must study all four parts of Torah. The four parts of Torah are, there you go. We have Pshat. Pshat is the simple explanation. What you see is what you get. The verse says it, that's what it is. Then you have Remes, how the verse said it, what it didn't say, the choice of words. You read between the lines. So it's a totally different way of learning. Then you have Drash. This is not something we would readily see without an expert. The expert, the rabbis, they say over here it uses one word, and in a similar case it uses the next word. We can apply the logic, we can apply the law from one to the other. That is drash. We expound it and we extrapolate how the Torah did it. And lastly, this is something that we said before, which is it's called Kabbalah. It was passed down from teacher to select student until the Arizal made it a point that everyone should study it and everyone should apply it. So everyone has to learn all these four. What happens if a person doesn't? Then that's unfinished business. Then the soul has to come back. Leon, you had a question?
No, I'm listening to you.
No, everything's good?
Yeah, so far.
Okay, good. So now each level is vast because they're all interconnected, and you can never reach the bottomless pit or the highest levels, because there's always something else to learn. And each person, because of their unique identity of the soul, has their unique way of understanding. So this is the explanation of the prayer we say at the end of the Amidah. Look at page 179. The end of the Amidah, right as we finish, we're about to walk away. We take our 3 steps back, and we say, "May it be your will, God, that the Holy Temple be rebuilt speedily in our days, and grant us," and this is the word I want to focus on, "our portion in the Torah." Shouldn't it be grant us a portion in the Torah? We're asking God that we should be able to learn Torah. Why is it our portion in the Torah? Because based on this explanation, this makes sense. Because every person identifies with a different part in the Torah. I'll tell you another story with the Arizal. The Arizal had a student. He's known as the Alshich. He's buried in Tveria. Very great man. He wrote many books on Allah. And one day he came to the Arizal with a complaint. He said, "Every single day I come to your lesson," or however often the Arizal gave a lesson. "And as soon as you start talking, I fall asleep. And it bothers me because I want to hear what you have to say. And no matter what, I pass out, I fall asleep. And I'm not tired. What's going on?" So the Rizal explained, he said, because your soul is rooted in the dimension of drash, the homiletical extrapolation. And I'm talking about sod. So there's no connection. So your soul ascends to try to access it. And that's why the Alshich wrote a book on halacha. Although he learned Kabbalah also. He wrote a book on halacha, not on Kabbalah. And the Rebbe explains it perfectly. Text 5b. He says, explained in numerous sources that the soul of each Jew has a specific segment of Torah to which it is associated. This explains the phrasing when it says, grant us our portion in the Torah. Our portion implies that each of us has a unique portion within the Torah. This concept is further expressed in our sage's statement that there are novel Torah concepts that an accomplished student of the Torah is destined to introduce. In other words, the entire universe anticipates the birth of this particular diligent student, awaiting the moment that the student innovates, meaning uncovers the specific concept within the Torah. For this concept is this student's portion in the Torah. Now, that means so each of us have to study all four portions. Not only do we have to we have to study all four dimensions of the Torah, but each soul must uncover its unique part in the Torah. And the whole entire creation of the universe is waiting for you to do your job. So if that job is not done, then the soul has to come back. Soul has to be reincarnated. So in summation, the mission of the soul is, number one, we have to complete all 613 mitzvahs. I'm behind on my. We have to study all four layers of the Torah, and you have to find your unique part in the Torah. This is the figure of 5.1 on page 181. Okay. So now we did the how, we did the why. Now let's get to the who. Any questions before we go on to the next section? So far, so good. Michael J., page 182. Go.
And I have to stop what I was doing.
The purpose, I don't care. The purpose.
The purpose. The purpose of reincarnation is now a lot clearer. But how does it actually work? What is the mechanism of recycling souls? It is important to note that there are relatively standard forms of reincarnation for the above stated purposes, but there are also several variations of reincarnation, including partial reincarnation, known as Ibor, and even non-human reincarnation. Really? Okay.
Yeah. Really?
Sounds a little too Indian to me.
No. Well, okay. So here's what we know so far, right? I feel like I'm a guy in the news. It's 8 o'clock news, and here's what we know. All the souls are interconnected, like roots and branches of a tree. Every soul has a mission, right? Doing mitzvahs and studying Torah. When a soul does not complete its mission, then it has to come back. So who is reincarnated? So one thing is for sure not. The same person doesn't come back. Because like when Mashiach comes, we're gonna have a bunch of us walking around. So here's the good news. What you do good, the good acts you do are stored away. So let's say, for example, we will talk about a soul, right, as an energy pack, right, that you have to use all 100% or not to damage it. If 20% of that is used, then we take it, we put it in the done file, and now this 80% takes on a new personality. Souls are not recycled. If the soul didn't complete its mission, or if the soul did something wrong, so then the element of the soul that is that is being reincarnated is a totally new identity based on its mission that it has to do. Because the mission is different. Why? Because the soul obviously did some good. So why would it come back to do exactly the same thing? It wouldn't. It's coming back to rectify or to now utilize the opportunity to do good. Look at page number 6. Sorry, text number 6, page 182. Look what Rav Chaim Vital says. Although we've stated in numerous passages that a specific individual soul was reincarnated in a particular person, and it was subsequently reincarnated in another specific individual, and so on, do not misread this as implying that the original soul itself is reincarnated repeatedly. Rather, each human soul branches out into innumerable roots. Each root contains an infinite quantity of soul sparks. With each subsequent reincarnation, a number of these sparks are rectified, and they ascend to enjoy the rewards of heaven that we spoke about last week, dwell in the particular strata of Gan Eden, dwell and are appropriate for them. However, those soul sparks not rectified are reincarnated to provide further opportunity for rectification. So I think this answer,
Rectified means that they committed this, they achieved the 613 mitzvot.
either they didn't do the positive mitzvah, meaning they had an opportunity to do a mitzvah and they didn't, or they transgressed something, they did something they weren't supposed to.
Okay.
Make sense?
Question for you, Rabbi.
Yeah, Leon.
Okay, in lesson 1, I brought up reincarnation. You said to wait for lesson 5.
Yes.
All right, here we are in lesson 5. We're talking about reincarnation.
Okay.
We need to complete the 630
13.
613 mitzvahs. We have to read Torah, the 4 sections, and we have to find the portion that's ours. Okay, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so now, if you haven't completed all these components, you keep coming back, you may not remember everything, but you have branched off into other parts, but your somewhat semblance exists with your past, correct? Because somebody sitting with an abacus.
1 second. You said a few things there, Leon. Well, let's break down your statement. You said you come back, and then you said you remember. We're going to get to the memory part in a moment, okay?
Okay, but my question is this. You also mentioned earlier, Michael, that you can come back reincarnated as an animal. Well, how can an animal do mitzvahs? And how
Okay,
can
hold on. Okay, we'll get.
Okay,
We'll get to that.
I'm in your hands.
Why?
Okay.
Why would the soul be reincarnated? Yes. Okay. Yes. But before we get to that, I want to establish that the same person doesn't come back. Only the incomplete person, the unaccomplished part of the soul comes back. So to go back, so it's like you're grafting every cell has the complete DNA. What's it called? Bridge thing.
Genetic breakdown.
Right. So you can take one cell out and it has the complete picture. So you're grafting a new identity from that soul, from that cell. But God forbid to think that you're just recycled garbage. If you look at the bottom of the barrel, you see it has and you can't see it. It has number 2. So at the bottom of your soul, it doesn't have number 0. You've been here before. So there's the rectified part. There's the stuff you've already done, the mitzvot that were properly observed, and that goes up to Gan Eden, and that's perfect. Job well done. You see, put it this way: if you stub your toe, your entire body is in pain. You can't just go about doing a task, so to speak, with your hands if something falls in your toe, because your entire body's in pain, because you're one unit. But over here, we're saying that the healthy part of the soul, the accomplished part of the soul, is sort of separated from the unaccomplished part of the soul. The accomplished part of the soul goes up to Gan Eden and enjoys the fruits of its labor. The unaccomplished part of the soul, or the damaged part of the soul, because when a person does things wrong, it affects the soul, right? We spoke about that last week. That needs to be elevated or rectified. And that's why the soul comes back. So to go, so to speak, to go back to last week, you know, in the Christian belief, there's a concept of eternal damnation. We don't believe in that because you did something wrong. Now God's giving you a chance to make it right. So now, so what's the difference between Gehenna and reincarnation? Well, it also depends on the severity of the transgression that the person did. If it was a minor transgression, again, I'm not the one to judge minor or major. I'm telling you how it's stated. A minor transgression, person can go through Gehenna. If it's something really major, then a person has to be reincarnated. The Remes Chachma, which is a book of Musar, of ethics, says like there's something interesting. 1 second, Elizabeth. He says, he compares it in his writings, he compares it to a person who has a sickness and affliction and a disease in the limb. So some diseases, some infections can be treated, and that's Gehenna. And some infections, the limb has to be amputated. But unlike in modern medicine, when you take the limb and throw it out as garbage, but from this amputated limb, so to speak, we create a new being, and now this person has the ability to make things right. Elizabeth, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm a little confused, and I just need clarification. So you're saying that when we die, the part of our soul that needs to come back and rectify something comes back, so that we don't come back complete. Part of us goes to Gan Eden, but part of us comes back. It's not that we are a mixture of different souls, or are you saying that we are also?
No, exactly. So therefore, there's no two people as the same. Each person, their identity is based on their particular life mission. So put it this way: you have the good, you don't have the bad. It means your mission is based on the good that your soul did, but you're not weighed down by the bad. Does that make sense? Yes?
No. So the part that we don't come back the same way, right? So which part comes back? The part that has to fix things.
Right. So if you have, let me try it like this. Let's say the soul originally, its identity is based on 613 jobs. Okay? Let's say it accomplished 100. So the soul comes back. It's going to have a different identity, totally different identity, because now its identity is 513 jobs. Make sense?
Okay.
Your identity, your character is based on your mission in life. Your mission in life is based on what you yet still have to do.
Okay, but it's still all of me coming back then. It's not like anything, it's not bits and pieces of me.
When you say me, what do you mean by me?
My soul.
Well, your soul is the personality of your soul is based on what it has to do. So let's say the exact same soul, Elizabeth Agassiz, came back. What would be the point? To basically all your good deeds before are not? That's not fair. So what the Kabbalah is telling you is that the good part of it is elevated, and the incomplete part of it comes back. So there'll only ever be one Elizabeth Agassiz.
Okay.
Ellen, go. Yeah.
When the Mashiach comes, all these souls come back. How?
So, because, like I was saying, because we're going to deal with Tchias Mason next week, but because each soul is a unique identity, so everyone's going to have a different personality. Now, I want to talk about something else. The concept of memory. Liam brought this up. There's no memory between one soul and the other soul because each soul is totally separate based on its mission. Now, from the greater picture, from God's greater picture, they all work together to complete a job. So, on one hand, you have this awesome individual responsibility and uniqueness about you that only you can do. On the other hand, you're part of this grand scheme, this God's great picture of what he plans. And you're working in partnership with all the people that came before you and all the ones that come after you to accomplish this grand mission. That's something only you can do. And when Mashiach comes, only you are going to come back to enjoy the product of your actions.
Which portion is coming back? The one that created the good deeds? How about the ones that shortcut?
No, the one that created the good deeds, because good is eternal. Bad withers away.
Okay, one final question.
No,
There's scientific proof that past life regressions tell you where you've been before, several lifetimes, numerous lifetimes. If you can't remember on the conscious level, on the subconscious level, you can.
Okay, I think there's a text here that says that there are people that know. Do we know? Okay, that's text number 10. Do we know who we are? Do we know who we are? We're gonna get to that at the end of the class.
Okay. Yes.
If it's not explained then bring up the question. I have a question. Unfortunately, we cannot know what our soul in the past. Okay, so Esther, yes, that's a very, very good question. How do we know what to do? We'll get to that. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Let's first talk about the purpose of reincarnation, then we'll talk about what we have to do. Okay, Esther, we'll get to that in a second. But let's say for a moment that, going back to Ellen's question, that you are a very, very good guy or good gal, right? You did everything you're supposed to do. You didn't violate any averis. You did all the mitzvahs. But there are certain mitzvahs you could only do if you're a Kohen, if you're a Levi, if you live in the land of Israel, right? If you're a man, if you're a woman, right? I mean, certain things don't apply, right? There's certain. What if you have to be a Kohen Gadol, or if you're a king? I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So there's a concept called ibur. Ibur is impregnation. And this is text 7a, page 183. This is not to be confused with dibuk, with possessed. This is not the soul possessing a conscious person. What it is the soul hitchhiking a ride. Look at text 7a. The concept of Gilgul, this is page 183, is that a soul requires further rectification. Enters the body of a child as emerges from the mother's womb to serve as a newborn soul. It has no permission to leave until the person's destined day of death. By contrast, the concept of ibur, soul impregnation, is that a soul enters the body inhabited by the soul, and in this case, the individual is merely just tagging along in order to complete a job. This the purpose is text 7b. Either because it didn't have the opportunity to do the mitzvah, or it failed to do the mitzvah. Now this person has that opportunity, so it is joining along, or B. This is on page 184. Or it's a soul of a tzaddik. It's going to help a person. All right, so you're totally not conscious of this. It's all on a soul level, and as soon as it does what it has to do, it leaves. I'm sure there's gonna be questions about this.
Does that
Any questions
explain
about
does that explain the voice in my head?
this? No comments. All right.
Is that voice reverberating or is it just making noise?
It's an ongoing conversation all day long.
Okay. So this answers the question of how could one soul do all 613 mitzvahs? Because it kind of hitchhikes a ride. When a person in here, conscious person, has that ability, then it all comes together. Okay, let's get to another concept of another question, which I'm surprised no one asked. There are 613 commandments, right? All 600,000 people have to do all four parts of the Torah. So 600,000 times 4 is 2.4 million. That's a lot of work to do. So are we saying that the soul just keeps coming back and back and back and back and again and again ad infinitum until the job gets done? And what if the job doesn't get done? So let's go to text 8. This is on page 185. When a human soul comes to the world and becomes soiled by sin and reincarnates in another body, then the second life is its first reincarnation. If it fails, it comes back a second. If it fails again, comes back a third. After that, no more reincarnation. That means the most the soul can come around is 4 times. Now, what happens? The soul needs rectification. So here we have this concept of reincarnation in non-human beings, in animal, plant, or inanimate. Text 9 on page 186 says the limitation of twice or thrice based on a verse in Job. Rather, it's forced to wander the planet until it is reincarnated in an inanimate, vegetative, or animal entity. Then, after it's done its penance, there is hope for the future. For God's endless mercy extends to all his creatures. So now you might ask, does the animal start talking? Doing math? The answer is no. So for those who have been in a coma, they've come and when they've come out, they've said that they're there. They're conscious. They feel like they're conscious, but they just can't express themselves. They're locked in a prison. It's tremendous torture. It's very frustrating because they hear people talking and everything else, and they can't say anything. People who have been in a coma have said this. So after 3 unsuccessful reincarnations, this human soul comes into this non-human entity, and it feels the fact that it's human, but it cannot have an effect, and it's very traumatizing for the soul because it is locked in this inhuman entity, and it can't do anything about it. And that serves as a cleansing, as a penance for the soul. Any questions about that? We're all good. We're all good with that.
So there's only three chances, or whatever, 3 chances to complete the 613 mitzvot.
Yeah. But they're saying most people don't need 3 chances. Because it says in the Gemara that every Jew is filled with mitzvot like a pomegranate is filled with seeds. And God gives you the opportunity to make the right choice. So we're saying is most times people make the right choice.
There's a lot of vegetables.
So
that's why there's a lot of vegetables and inanimate objects in this world.
Right. Exactly. That's why. By the way, you should know, I was reading that reincarnation in inanimate or plant or not necessarily a punishment for something's wrong. It says it's read, so I forgot where it says that tzaddikim many times come back come reincarnated in fish. Why in fish? I can't remember. God has his way of doing things. I don't know. Okay, this is I'm sure a question that's on a lot of people's mind. I know I think about it. My soul comes back. Who was I previously? Right? What do you want to know? So this is the question, on page 180, on page 187. Is there a way to discover our previous reincarnations? And perhaps more critical for the mission-minded, Esther said, can we know what we want to do? If we know what we want to do, what we have to do, we'll just go straight to that job. Because, like Esther said, it's very unfair because we don't know what we need to do, right? Why put us on this earth and just tell, okay, do everything? Okay. So first of all, let's deal with who were you? So text number 10. The Ramak, another famous Kabbalist, lived in Tzvat in the 1500s. He writes, it's impossible to know. Only the Kabbalist, what do you mean go with the flow? I'm not sure what that means. Gabriel, explain. So it says, it's impossible. It's impossible you're going to know. Only a great Kabbalist will know. Now to answer Esther's question, you're going to ask, how will we know the purpose which you entered into the world? And which mitzvah do I have to be careful to perform? And which transgression which we must especially avoid? The answer is like this. Like Gabriel saying, follow the road. The answer that naturally ingrained in us. We experience a natural affinity for a certain mitzvah, or our evil inclination really pushes us to do a particular sin. So if you find a sin that's really tugging at you, you really want to do, then that's probably what you should be most avoiding. And if you find a love for a certain mitzvah, I once read, if you find a mitzvah that you find it's very difficult to do, then that might be the mitzvah why you're here. Because the Yetzer Hara, the forces of evil and impurity, are trying to stop you from realizing your mission and realizing the whole mission for the world. So if there's a mitzvah that you feel hard to do, or an avera that just, if I find it very easy to do, then there's your answer. So could I be an animal? Answer. So to be an animal, wait, one question. I'm answering questions here in the chat. One question is, so to be an animal is the worst punishment? Answer is yes. To be an animal is the worst punishment for the soul, because it realizes it's a human soul and it can't do anything, can't express itself. So could I be an animal insect with my memory as a human? No. There's no reincarnation for animals. Animals don't have a mission in life. Their job is to exist, not to contribute. Human beings contribute. So there's reincarnation by human beings, not by animals. Okay. So it's so interesting that one rabbi wrote that it's a good thing we don't know who we were in previous lives, because what if I bump into the guy who owes me $20 from a previous life? I'll say, hey, I give him my 20, or else. However, although the Ramak says, do we have time? Because I have some pretty interesting stuff to say here. Should I go for a little bit and explain about the Gilgulim we do know about? You guys want to hear about that?
Sure.
So although it says we don't know exactly who and what, there are some people it is brought down in Sfarim. So for example, I'll try to make this have a lot written here. So for example, it's written down. By the way, there is a book you should know. It's in Hebrew, but it's called Sefer HaGilgulim. It talks about all these different things. So Cain and Abel, right? So Cain and Abel didn't get along, right? So Cain and Abel made a pact that Cain would keep all the land, and Abel would keep all the movable objects. Cain was born with one twin sister, which he married. Abel was born with two twin sisters. So they had a fight. Cain wanted the extra girl, and also he didn't let Abel's sheep, which is movable, graze on his land. So they fight, and obviously they killed him. So Cain killed Abel. So Cain did three things wrong. First of all, he killed Abel. Number one, he fought over the girl. Number three, he didn't allow Abel's sheep to graze on his land. So Kabbalah tells us that the soul of Cain was reincarnated in Jethro. The soul of Abel was reincarnated in Moshe, who was a shepherd. The soul of that triplet sister was reincarnated in Zipporah. So when the shepherds chased away Jethro's sheep, that rectified for one sin. When Jethro saved Moshe's life, that rectified the sin of murder of Hevel. And when Jethro gave Zipporah as her hand in marriage to Moshe, that rectified that sin. Then we have also, it says that Zipporah was paying the fact that she wasn't at the Exodus and she didn't merit to sing the song, the splitting of the sea. So she was reincarnated as Deborah, the prophetess, one of the most beautiful songs in the book of Kings, from the book of Judges is from Deborah. Then what else? So we have the prophet Shmuel was reincarnated in the great Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, which we say on Pesach night, I am like 70 years old. The word says I am like. The word ben is nun beis, which is 52. Elazar ben Azariah was 18. 18 plus 52 is 70. Because he recognized he had the soul of Samuel the prophet. I mean, I'll do one more. Anyway, actually, no, we're running out of time. If you want, I'll tell you more afterwards. There's so much. I've written down over here. Anyway, so the fact that we all have to learn. We have to learn all parts of Torah. That's what we have to do. And if you find a part that's challenging, that's the part you have to tackle more. If there's a mitzvah you struggle with, then you gotta try harder. And if there's an avera that really entices you, you gotta try harder. And this is what the Rebbe was telling someone. Text number 11, page 188. Anybody want to read? Give me a break. Anyone want to read text number 11?
I'll read it if you want.
Go ahead. 188.
I'm looking. I'm replying to your letter. Is that where you want me to start it?
Yeah.
I'm replying to your letter in which you inform me that you accepted and are implementing my directives regarding Torah studies, classes, and giving charity. But as far as the situation at home is concerned, your marital harmony appears only superficially to have improved, while the underlying reality remains unsatisfactory. I already told you in my previous letters that it would be challenging. You are meant to find it difficult, for the success of your life's mission hinges upon your sincere efforts towards marital harmony. Our mystical teachings reveal that rare individuals are born with original souls. The rest of us are reincarnations. We return to complete the fulfillment of the mitzvah, and that we missed in previous lifetimes. Certainly we are obligated in all of the mitzvot in every lifetime, but specific mitzvot we admit in earlier incarnations are critical to the rectification of our souls and the rectification of this world. Using evil inclination as a guide, we can identify the mitzvot that determine the outcome of our life's mission. Our inclination opposes the mitzvot that we finalized in previous lifetimes, but only to the degree necessary to create free choice between good and evil. By contrast, it unleashes a fierce storm of opposition with countless hurdles and challenges. When we approach a mitzvah that we failed to fulfill in previous incarnations, therefore your many hurdles to marital harmony reveal its indispensability to your rectification. Do whatever it takes to achieve harmony.
Thank you very much, Steve. So I really want to drive home this point that every person is unique and independent and has its unique mission. And you got to tackle your job. I just want to bring a similar idea. The angels don't have names. We find it a couple times in the Torah where the Jacob or whatever it is asked the angel his name. He said, I don't have a name. My name is based on my mission. Your name, your identity is based on your mission. You don't share a name with everyone else. You got to go out there and tackle and do your job to do everything, cover everything. The one thing that's hardest for you, that's your life mission. And Rabbi Tau expresses this very nice idea very nicely in the following video. And here we go.
Today's reflection is going to help us try to relate to the idea that our souls came to the world this time around for a special purpose. A mitzvah, a good act that has special value in this lifetime. Now, how can we know such a thing? To a great extent, we can't. However, there's a way that we can catch a glimpse into what is important for the soul in this lifetime. And that is by way of a metaphor which we will now visualize. Picture in your mind's eye, you are leading an army out to battle. If the militaristic imagery is not to your liking, you can imagine a game of chess. Same idea applies. You're leading your army out to battle, and you begin to become aware that your opponent, your enemy, is focused on striking you in one particular spot. Now, it hadn't occurred to you that this spot has importance, but from the fact that the enemy keeps focusing on it, keeps going after it, we begin to realize that it must have strategic importance to the enemy. As you're imagining this, shift now and think about your life and think about a mitzvah or a good deed that is inordinately difficult for you. And by inordinately, what I mean is this. We all have mitzvahs that are harder and easier for all of us. But then there are mitzvahs that by all rights should be easy. It shouldn't be so challenging, and for some inexplicable reason, we just keep having resistance in that area. Why are we having inexplicably more resistance in that area? Why? Because it has that much more strategic importance, and therefore all things in the universe being counterbalanced, our Maker has allowed a special resistance, a special challenge to give us pushback in that one area that we most need to overcome. So imagine, connect to yourself, think of yourself, think of that area, that mitzvah that's the hardest for you, the one that keeps on challenging you. And now imagine it, rather than as something that you're frustrated about, imagine it as your most precious asset. So precious that the enemy is specifically focusing on it. Let's take a moment to try to think of that mitzvah that is the most difficult, and to now see it as that mitzvah which in this lifetime is apparently the most important and most impactful. We'll take a moment now to envision this, to connect to this feeling. Feel yourself being empowered, knowing that this mitzvah has so much power, so much influence, and that is where the resistance is coming from.
Okay, I guess the time got away and it's getting pretty late, so I'm going to try to go through the end of the class a little quickly, unless you guys want me to slow down. Elizabeth, to answer your question, the mitzvahs are all written in the Torah, 5 books of Moses. Where they're explained, there's a great book called the Sefer HaChinuch. It's available in English. It takes every mitzvah, tells you where the source of it is in the Torah, gives a short synopsis. You can buy, I think it's like a 5, we have it here in the shul, a 5-volume set. I mean, that's Hebrew and English. In just the English, it's probably smaller, and it's very good. Called Sefer HaChinuch. I'll type it here on the Sefer. I don't know why my caps lock is on. Chinuch. That's the okay. So text number 12 is reiterating the this is from the Rebbe Rashab Shalom Dei Ber Lubavitch, page 190, that what God is orchestrating this entire world is for what? Is is for us to be at a certain place at a certain time in order to fulfill a certain mission. So we have to focus on what's easy for us to do and what's hard for us to do, and really focus on and try and get the job done. Let's go back to that original survey or quiz we took. Let's go through the 7 questions. Is there someone to help search that purpose? Yeah, the Rebbe, the leader of the generation. That's the job of the Rebbe. Exactly. That's exactly his job. To help each one of us try to find our purpose. Yep. That's your job as a nothing. Not to do the job for us, to help us do our job. So do we believe in reincarnation? Yes. Number 2, the question number 2 was, in the Jewish view, that a soul comes back into another body. Do we believe in that? No? What's the answer?
Yes.
Well, not really, because the soul comes back, but it's a yes and no. It's a trick question. You come back, but sort of come back. Yes and no. The positive stays, and the unrefined comes back. Human soul can be reincarnated a non-human entity. We saw that, yes. A reincarnated soul does not have its own identity, but shares its identity with someone else. That's also a tricky question. It shares the positive part, the negative part it does not. The purpose of doing good in one current lifetime is a higher status. What does Judaism say about that? True or false?
No, false.
False. The reason why we put that in there is because that's an Indian belief. So what we wanted to unequivocally say it's false. A soul is reincarnated as a penalty for previous life. It's not a penalty. Not a penalty. It's unfinished business. It's not a punishment. You have a job to do. You got to do your job. Most souls today are reincarnated. That is most definitely true. Okay, let's finish up over here. So, at the beginning of the lesson, we spoke about the concept of, we feel negative, that I have to fix someone else's mistake, and it takes away my own identity. But as we saw throughout the whole lesson, there's no reason to have a negative view on reincarnation. In fact, the previous soul is handing the baton, and now you have your mission. You're part of a what is it, the 400 meter, the 400 meter dash. Your job is to do this. Excuse me. This particular job, this particular mission in this grand race of life. So the good news is we're standing on the shoulders of our forefathers and all the good deeds, and we are compounding the good deeds on top of the good deeds. And it's not just us. We're not just a fleck of dust just passing through, meaningless, that in the grand scheme of time, all the billions and billions of people who lived, what does value of you or me really have? Nothing. But wouldn't you say that we're part of God's grand plan, and we're not just, I'm here to better myself. I'm here to better all of humanity, not just currently, but of all time. That's major stuff. That gives your life meaning. That gives your life. That gives your life. That gives your life purpose. What did I just do? How come? And it provides a role within the general human mission. And this was the foundation of Viktor Frankl's logotherapy. And he wrote it in the Holocaust. And you see in text number 13. How come I'm going backwards? There you go. And he said, mental health, the tension between what is already achieved and what is still yet to accomplish. And what he's saying is, if you know that you have a job to do, that gives you strength. That gives you a determination. And sometimes we're faced with in life. I mean, he knew he was in Auschwitz and he was in another camp, and he would know better than anyone. Sometimes we're faced with setbacks and challenges that are unfair, nothing of our doing. But if we know that we have a mission in life, if we have a goal, then we can, what's the right way to put this? We can endure, such challenges and impediments, and we can overcome. So instead of being depressed, we have a positivity to life, and we have a resilience to all these challenges. So we have the determination to attain a goal. We have the strength to overcome obstacles, and not only that, I wake up in the morning and I feel like I have something to do. I have personal responsibility. I don't feel like, I can do what I want when I want. It doesn't really matter. No, what you do affects your family, your community, humanity from the beginning of time until the end. So it changes your attitude towards your circumstances that you find yourself in. You find the potential within suffering, and you have the ability to seize every role. Now, I want to end off something. It was interesting. Somebody was in my office today, and he was, raised, in a more observant, and he married a woman in who attends a Reform synagogue, and he was saying his wife bemoans the fact that the woman's role in Orthodoxy is said. It's interesting. She would say that, but it comes from an uneducated point of view, because if you look at what the quote unquote Orthodox say of the role of woman, then the woman would be flooding into Orthodox temples, because based on the Kabbalah, and there was no greater advocate and no greater spokesman for the woman's role in the realization of the woman's purpose than Rebbe. And this wasn't later. This is back in the 50s, and the 60s, that the Rebbe said it's the woman who are going to help bring Mashiach, just like it was the woman who helped bring the redemption in the time of Egypt. We said before, every soul has a masculine and feminine part. So as right now, it may seem as the masculine is more dominant, but there's a verse King Solomon said, "Eishes chaya teres baila," a woman of valor crowns her husband. The crown is above, and this is going to be realized at the coming of Mashiach. Text number 14. Jewish women and girls play an essential role, page 194, in the highly critical mission of bringing about the true and complete redemption and the realization of the creation of the world. The woman played an indispensable role in our exodus from Egypt. Indeed, our sages state that our ancestors were redeemed from Egypt in the merit of the deeds of the righteous woman. And we have discussed repeatedly, they fulfill this role in each subsequent generation. This is especially true in our present time. The Rebbe continues, For we are a reincarnation of the generation that left Egypt. Just like the generation that left Egypt was the last generation of exile and the first generation of redemption, so too the Rebbe said, we are the last generation of exile and we are the first generation of redemption. Indeed, we can clearly observe that Jewish women and girls are naturally predisposed far more readily than the mitzvot to the idea of immediately leaving the exile. When the Jews left Egypt, it was a woman who brought instruments and tambourines because they knew future miracles would come. In this week's parsha, it's the men who served the golden calf. And throughout the Torah, it's the men who want to go back to Egypt. The women always want to forge ahead to go to the land of Israel to realize God's purpose. So it says, less effort is required to convince them that we must leave this exile already than is required to inspire them. So women got to keep up the work, and men have to learn from the woman to realize, stop being so consumed in what you want, and realize that you're here for a much greater purpose. Exercise 5.2, page 195. From the various ideas offered in today's lesson, record one that resonates with you. Identify a mitzvah which you feel a strong connection, one that might constitute the very reason that your soul entered this world. Next week, we're going to talk about the coming of Mashiach, and we're going to talk about the resurrection of the dead, and we're going to tie all of them together, why the souls come down. Next week, again, is a Monday. Key points.
Lesson 5. Where we go again. 1. Adam possessed the Jewish master soul that ultimately branched out into the 600,000 souls that received the Torah at Mount Sinai. All subsequent Jewish souls are offshoots of these soul roots. 2. The 600,000 primary souls were each given a part of the world to perfect through fulfillment of the 613 mitzvot. When a soul accomplishes its mission, it itself also gains
Can I ask a quick
rectification
question?
and elevation.
After the video, okay?
Okay.
3. Every root soul must also study each of the Torah's 4 layers of teaching and uncover its unique part in Torah. 4. Few, if any, of the original souls completed all 613 mitzvot, nor the required study during their original lifetimes. Reincarnation provides souls with additional opportunities to complete their missions and the rectification of the world and themselves. 5. When a person dies, all the refined elements of their soul return to heaven. A new soul, built from the elements that were left unrectified, is then grafted from the stem soul and returned to this world. 6. As a general rule, our souls are reincarnations, but it is impossible to be conscious of or to accurately sense the experiences of our previous lifetimes. 7. Clues to the nature of our soul's unique task in this world can be gleaned from A. Our strengths and passions, B. Our weaknesses and struggles, and C. Our unique life circumstances. 8. The Kabbalistic view of reincarnation does not deny us our personal identity. Each of us is a complete and unique individual who is simultaneously and integrally linked to a far greater reality. Reincarnation ascribes greater importance to our existence and provides each of us a unique role within the overall human mission.
All right. So next week we said realizing purpose, and realize we're going to tie it all together with what we learned and how it affects our daily life. Yes, Leon, questions?
Okay, question for you. If you have 3 times an opportunity to come back, what happens if you do not fulfill the requirements and you?
So the soul is reincarnated in an animal or plant or inanimate object. That suffering, that the lack of expression the soul has, serves as a penance.
Okay, so once penance is served, do you return as a human or?
No, there is no return because it's been rectified or cleansed or
Okay, do you tarry to heaven or do you stay in limbo?
no, souls never stay in limbo. Souls never stay in limbo. They're either enjoying the fruits of their labor in Gan Eden, or
Okay.
they're in the process of getting there. Cleansing, rectification, elevation.
But will penance when they be able to rise up?
Yes, exactly. So after that period, whatever it is done, then they go to Gan Eden.
All right, thank you, Rabbi.
By the way, there's a great additional reading at the end of the chapter. So it's good stuff. You can always we'll send out the email with a link to the class and also more articles and videos. You're encouraged to go to jewishpines.com and search the reincarnation. It's a fabulous resource. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Very good lesson. Very good lesson tonight.
Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good
Thank
week.
you very much.
Shabbos. See you next
Hey,
Monday.
Question.
Yeah.
We used to be on Tuesday nights. Now we're on Monday nights. Are you staying on Monday nights?
No, because I have a wedding next Tuesday night. And last Tuesday night, Cyril made me a surprise birthday party. So we just did Monday just now, okay? But the after Pesach class is going to be on Tuesday again.
But today, the next class is also going to be Monday.
Yes, because I have a wedding on Tuesday.
Okay.
All right. Au revoir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sayonara.
We're gonna